Coffee is the third most popular drink in the world. You might ask, how is it third? Because the entire world drinks coffee, right? But the most popular drink in the world, that's also the healthiest and most useful, is water. And in second place, we have tea. The reason tea is in the number one spot is because a lot of Asian countries drink it. It's because most of the Asian countries drink it, and China and India is almost half the world's population, and they all drink tea, so that is why it's in the second spot. But let's get back to coffee. In this day and age, about 450 million cups of coffee is consumed by people per day. The country that uses the most coffee per capita is Finland, and it's 12 kilograms per capita in this country. That basically means the amount of coffee used by the Finnish people, you divide the weight by the population, you get 12 kilograms per person. But what's special about coffee that everybody wants to drink it? The history of coffee is not really clear. We really can't for sure say which country it came from. Some say coffee originated from Yemen. Some say no, it came from Ethiopia. Let's start off with Ethiopia and see what historians have to say about it. For the very first time, around 850 AD, it was written about coffee in this country. In the writing it says the people of Ethiopia took the coffee beans from the plant and put it in fire, and took it out the fire, turned it into powder and mixed it with water, and they wanted to experiment if they can actually consume this plant or not. After then, Ethiopians started using coffee in this way. But let's see what historians have to say about Yemen. The history books is pretty different from Yemen. A very long time ago, when Yemen was struggling with food and they couldn't find anything to eat, they would take coffee beans off a tree and eat it raw, something that's extremely bitter. This plant was plentiful in Yemen, but people were starving, and this created innovation with the coffee bean, and they were always trying different methods to make coffee work and make it taste better. The old writings always lead up to them, drying the coffee and mixing it with water. And it is because of these two writings that historians can't be sure that coffee came from Yemen or Ethiopia, and both of them get credit for where it originated from. They are sure about one thing though: the coffee plant originated from Ethiopia. There is a writing from the 14th century that the people of Yemen created the coffee drink, and they drink it for energy, and after this, coffee is sent all over Africa, and most African countries used it. In the 17th century, the Dutch visit Africa and they get familiar with coffee. The first thing they did is that they took the plant to Sri Lanka and started farming it. They successfully do that, and for the very first time in the year 1711, they take coffee to Europe. It didn't take long for the Europeans to fall in love with coffee, and up next it was the French and Portuguese that went to Central America and South America to plant coffee. The French went to Central America, and Portugal went to modern-day Brazil, and they realized that the weather there is perfect for the coffee plant. This is the coffee map of the world, which is called the coffee belt as well. In the yellow spots, it's where coffee is the best. But a lot of people say the highest quality coffee comes from Central and South America. But you really can't say that because people have preferences and they like the Asian ones a little bit better. There are plenty of different types of coffee, but the most famous one that's used around the world is the Arabica. But right now, South America produces the most amount of coffee, and in between these countries, Brazil is number 1 and Colombia is number 2. But if you want to count it as worldwide, Brazil is number 1 and Vietnam is number 2. When you drink cheaper coffee in like a coffee shop, the coffee they serve is usually the Robusta, and the reason is that it's more plentiful when you plant it and it doesn't take as long as the Arabica, and that is why it's a little bit cheaper and it's used in different coffee stores. If you want to know different types of coffee, you kind of have to be an expert because they are different, but they're very similar at the same time. Even though coffee originated from Yemen and Ethiopia, but it's known as a Western drink. Except England, most Western countries only drink coffee, and obviously the Brits love their tea. Another interesting fact about coffee is that in the Middle Ages, coffee was known as the devil's drink, and it was illegal to use it. And if you've seen our video about the Holy Roman Empire, you know what they do if they catch you drinking the devil's drink. This drink remains as the devil's drink for hundreds of years, until the 17th century, when Pope Clement VIII becomes the Pope. It seems like he liked coffee because he changed his mind real quick and told them there was a mistake. The people complained to the church on why they said that. We thought this was the devil's drink. By hearing that, Pope gave an excuse on how to use it. You have to wash it before you use it. When you wash the coffee, you basically wash away the demons. The first coffee houses were opened up in the 16th century in the Ottoman Empire, and it was called the Kahvekhune, which is basically coffee house. Kahve comes from kafa, which is an Ethiopian word, and in English it's called coffee. After the Pope made coffee legal again, coffee houses started to open up in Europe as well. Something funny is that they wouldn't sell coffee to women in these coffee houses, and their excuse was that it's not good for women. It seems like the dudes didn't want the women to be around in the coffee houses. After this, coffee reaches maximum popularity in Europe, and around that time there were a lot of rumors about consuming coffee and how it's so good for you. Like they would say, whoever uses coffee doesn't get old. Anybody that's sick that drinks coffee will be healed immediately, and it was all fake news. Coffee is not a bad thing, but it doesn't heal you out of nowhere. When World War I begins, to give easy access to coffee for the soldiers, they made instant coffee for the very first time. Before then, you would have to ground the coffee beans yourself and consume it with water, but after that, it was all ready to go. They say it was the Japanese that invented instant coffee for their soldiers in World War I. When the entire West except England was consuming coffee, since the US was considered New England, they were also tea drinkers. As you know, back then, the US was under British rule. The Americans would live and had nothing to do with the Brits. But at the end of the 18th century, the British start taxing the Americans. The Americans get pissed off and start a revolution that's against taxing. One of these revolutions was called the Boston Tea Party. When British rule realizes that the Americans aren't listening to them, they put a sanction on them and doesn't send tea to them. The Americans were tea drinkers, so they were addicted, you could say, and they needed their tea. The British say, we won't send you tea until you pay your taxes. The Americans say, no, we don't even want your tea. When the British realized that it's getting sketchy, they decided to ship the tea anyways, and after a few months, it reaches Boston. On the 16th of December 1773, the people of Boston jump on the ship that's bringing the tea and dump 46 tons of tea into the sea. And after that, the Americans hated tea and started drinking coffee. In the end, let's see how good or bad coffee is for us. Just like tea, coffee has caffeine. And caffeine gives you energy boost. This is the main reason everybody uses coffee, and some are even addicted. Doctors say one of the best things coffee does for a human body is that it helps your blood sugar become lower, and it helps sugar be broken down. Another thing coffee is good for is that people that constantly drink this, compared to the ones that don't drink it at all, they have a 26% lower chance of getting colon cancer, and that's an impressive number. Statistics shows that 2/3 of the people that get Alzheimer's disease are women, and after some tests, they realized that the women that get Alzheimer's aren't the ones that drink coffee. Doctors say the caffeine that's found in coffee is the reason your brain has a less chance of developing Alzheimer's. Before we leave you guys, let me introduce you to the most expensive coffee. And it's made by this animal. The animal is called the Asian palm civet. This animal has to consume the Arabica coffee bean, and then the feces of this animal is the most expensive coffee in the entire world. The coffee is called Kopi Luwak, and the price of it is about $1,200 per kilogram. Would you guys drink this coffee? Please comment.